Welcome to Terra Talks, where we talk about all things real estate. In each episode, we'll tackle current trends and topics of interest, both locally and regionally. However or wherever you decide to tune in, you're not going to want to miss this.
Hi guys, Emma and I are back to discuss the real estate performance for Q2 of 2022. We're going to look at sales and rentals market and what the performance has been. Just a quick reminder that there's no central repository in Barbados for real estate transactions. So what we do is we actually look at Terra performance.
Yes.
We are one of the largest real estate agencies on the island with 18 agents.
I can't believe we're that big now.
So we looked specifically at our performance, and we figure that gives a little bit of an indication of the market as an overall. So we hope that this will be helpful. And this is a follow-on, just as a reminder, to the written detailed report that's on terrared.com. Yes. So we're going to start off with sales. And if we look at the numbers overall, the number of sales transactions are actually down by 10%. But let's delve into the detail. And where does that come from?
Yeah.
One of the stats that we look at is performance by parish. So what does demand look like in each parish? And when we broke that down, we realized that the number of transactions were actually down by 60% in Christchurch. And last year, in the second quarter, we closed a number of transactions at the very, very popular Harmony Estates, which is a local development, and the average price there is around $279,000. So that gives you a feel. While on the other end of the spectrum, in St. James and St. Peter, we saw huge increases,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So in St. James, for example, transactions were up by 57%, and in St. Peter, 300%. And those parishes typically have a lot of demand from foreign buyers.
Yeah. We saw quite a few of these sort of increases in St. James and St. Peter, driven by some off-beach sales of houses, land, and also townhouses, which is exciting for us, especially as the world opens back up after COVID, to see that we still have the popularity of Barbados with our foreign market as well. It's an exciting time ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that's really interesting about that is that while the number of transactions were down, our average sales price was up significantly. Let's just check that. That was up by 58%.
Yeah.
And the maximum achieved price was actually up by 80+%. So overall, that really is very impressive.
Our actual maximum achieved sale price was over $20 million, and we would love to tell you about it. It was located on the West Coast, but unfortunately an NDA was signed, so it's top secret. But we are pleased to report that the average sales price was over double than it was compared to 2021, which is just a sign of an improving market, which is, I think, what we've all been waiting for over the last few years, especially on the sales side. So, yeah, it was good to see that the West Coast still had the popularity, even though the Christchurch on the South Coast was down. And, yeah, I'm excited to see what the rest of 2022 brings.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing we do is we look at what types of products sold. So we look at whether it was houses, apartments, townhouses, etc. And leading on from what we had said earlier about Harmony Estates, which is a development with small homes, and the fact that the number of transactions there were down, we saw a decline in the demand for houses. So there were 50% less homes sold in the second quarter of 2022 when compared to 2021. But despite this decline, the total value of homes sold was up by 140%. And that was due to the higher value of the homes sold this quarter. So that kind of all leads back to what Emma was saying about the focus on the West Coast, which is definitely exciting times.
Yeah.
We saw the biggest increase in demand for townhouses.
Yeah, from 2 to 16%.
Yes.
Which is huge. Townhouses is probably our least popular area when it comes to our criteria of land, houses, apartments, apartment buildings. So it was nice to see that townhouses become more popular again, especially with a couple of new developments that we've listed on the West Coast as well and South.
Yes.
I'm excited to see how that sort of progresses. We've even seen a couple of hotels being sold in the last year.
We also saw one hotel sale in the last quarter, which I think is very interesting. This hotel required significant redevelopment, and it was off beach, close to the eastern end of the South Coast. Another statistic that we look at very carefully is the average discount of the list price. And again, that was impacted by Harmony Estates. So last year, in 2021, the average discount was 5.5%, whereas this year it was a little bit higher at 6.8%. But it's worth noting that the Harmony Estates homes sold at no discount.
Yeah.
So, of course, that would have impacted the overall average. And when we looked more carefully at the properties sold on the West Coast to the foreign market, we saw a number that were actually sold at no discount, which was not the case in 2021.
Yeah.
So I think that the prices in that category are definitely tightening up.
We're also seeing a couple of offers going over ask as well,
Yes.
which I know we've seen a few in the sort of last year or so, but yeah, it's nice to see that sort of continuing pattern for over ask as well, especially with the demand.
It's so interesting because, I mean, at the end of the day, that's something quite unique in Barbados, you know. In places like Canada, I've heard about that happening all the time.
Yeah, multiple offers.
Yeah, but it has been quite prominent now in Barbados. It's something we always have to look out for with our purchases, don't we?
Yeah,
Move quickly.
I think because of the demand being high and the supply being so low, suddenly you've got multiple offers on properties, which, like Betty just said, we've never had before. And because of the low stock, we're suddenly fighting to get people in, and it's an interesting time, especially if you are a cash buyer. Obviously, it's harder if you have to go through financing, so you do have to wait on the bank and what have you.
But in the backseat,
if you're a cash buyer, it's an exciting time to be in, definitely when you're looking to buy in Barbados.
Yeah. The other trend that we would have seen, which is really quite prominent all the time, is that the South and the West Coast are the clear leaders in terms of demand. But we did see a number of residential properties sold in St. Philip.
Yeah.
So I know we had one big sale at the Crane.
Yeah.
And that area of the island is it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It really is.
What's also exciting to see is we're getting a few commercial sales now. So in 2022, we actually had a commercial property sold in St. Michael. Really good location, a sort of up-and-coming commercial hub. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that progresses.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, a lot of spaces have been rented out so far, so watch this space.
Yeah. 3, 2, 1.
So we also look at year-to-date stats, and we are very happy to report that our transactions are actually up by 14% this year compared to last year.
And an even more impressive figure is that the sales revenue is up 81%.
That's insane.
Yeah, so that's definitely something to shout about. Now, lead volume, which is basically the number of calls that we get coming in, has remained quite steady. So that's something that we have to keep an eye on. It's down slightly by 2%. And then another lead indicator that we look at is something called pending sales. So it's basically sales that we've agreed, but they haven't closed. And I don't know about you, Emma, but I've definitely seen more sales falling through than I've ever had in my career. And I feel as though that is because of the length of time that sales are taking.
Yeah, I think length of time, and I think also with the current sort of world situation with exchange rates.
Yes.
I had one actually fall through recently, and we agreed a great deal. Everybody was excited, and then the pound plummeted compared to the US dollar, and my buyer got cold feet and decided to pull out and just wait and hang tight.
Yeah.
So I've seen a couple of those recently.
Right.
It's
So
one to watch.
despite the fact that we're both kind of seeing some of our sales fall off, the good news is that we are 63% up in our pending sales that at the end of Q2 2022 versus the end of Q2 2021. So that's a good way to end off our section on sales. And now we're going to look at rentals, which is also another very interesting dynamic going on because of the bumper year that we had in the end of 2020 and 2021 because of the welcome stamp that was introduced, which was hugely successful in bringing medium and long-term rentals to the island at a time when we really didn't have any demand from short-term rentals. And to be honest, I remember at the beginning of COVID thinking, gosh, when will I have a job? What will I do? And then that kept us,
it was scary,
exceedingly busy.
Stupidly busy. We were so lucky, so lucky. But what's amazing is obviously since the rental demand, and yes, there has been a slight decrease that we're about to talk about in rentals, the rental rates have remained the same or increased. 3-bedroom properties have increased by 34% in demand compared to 2021. And we have seen a couple of 4 and 5-bedroom properties, the demand for those decrease. But that's really due to the fact that our tourism sector has taken off again, which is really exciting. And larger villas that were rented out previously during the welcome stamp and our lockdowns and what have you have now switched back over to short-term rentals. So therefore, there's just not much supply out at the minute. I mean, I don't know about you, but trying to find certain rentals right now I'm finding really hard.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up. If you're listening and you are a landlord and you're looking to rent your property, please think of us because we just don't have enough supply at the moment. It's really one of those things that is tough to find the right product for our clients at the moment because there just is not a lot of supply.
And in all ranges, from like 2,000 Barbados dollars up to 25,000 Barbados dollars a month.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's baffling. And when somebody goes, "What do you mean there's nothing?" And for the first time ever, I'm sort of calling and cold calling and trying to find somebody to think about becoming a landlord. So if it's you, please call us.
So if you look at our the overall number of rentals that we achieved in the second quarter, it's actually down by a whopping 23%. So that would have been driven by the fact that obviously we don't have quite as much demand with the Welcome Stamp initiative still very popular, but a lot of people are returning to work in their parts of the world and the world really has returned to normal. But what we did is we also kind of said, well, okay, that's what when compared to 2021, but what about in 2019, which would have been pre-COVID? And those numbers are encouraging because, for example, let's just check that. The number of rental transactions have actually increased by 19% in Q2 2022 versus Q2 2019. So that's impressive, right?
Really
we're
impressive.
Still up on pre-COVID numbers. Another thing I think that's really worth mentioning is that furnished rentals always make up the majority of our demand.
Yeah.
Always, it's been above 80% for probably the last 5 years. But in this quarter, we actually saw the number of unfurnished rentals increase. So it increased from 13% to 19% of transactions. So I would say that we're seeing the return of what we would call like corporate rentals. Who can come here and they're coming in here for 3 years. They're bringing in their furniture with them, which is great.
And those are, when we say corporate rentals, we mean people from like the embassies, the EU, Pan American Health Organization, the UN, because they come for 5-year stints. So they want to sort of, bring their home furniture and belongings with them. It's for ages we had, clients that had unfurnished rentals or just appliance-only rentals suddenly furnishing. And now, we need those unfurnished and appliances-only rentals back.
Exactly. So just like with sales, we also look at the average, the minimum and the maximum, and the average rate that we've achieved. And all across the board, all of those figures are actually down if we compare ourselves to the performance in Q2 2021. But again, we kind of looked back and we said, well, what about 2019? How does it compare? And actually, our maximum rental rate achieved is 50% higher this quarter versus 2019.
Yeah.
So again, that's encouraging, isn't it?
Really encouraging. Also, during the COVID and the 2020 and 2021, we had a lot of luxury high-end villas that obviously made the switch from short-term to mid-term, long-term, because our tourism market obviously was non-existent at that time. And now we're starting to see obviously that luxury market reopen with the short-term rentals, and therefore we just don't have that high caliber of rental to offer. I mean, before COVID and the welcome stamp and those kind of things, I think the highest rental I'd ever done with Terra was 10,000 US, and that was huge.
Yeah.
And then I remember quoting somebody 30,000 US per month. They went, great.
Yeah, we had some really hefty rentals during COVID, for sure. People were, anxious to be part of the Barbados lifestyle, at a tough time for the world.
Yeah.
And then also, a lot of people were coming here medium term. So that when we say medium term, we mean like 3 months or 6 months. And typically you find that the average rental rate is higher when you're looking to come for a shorter period, which makes sense, right?
And that's also because it includes then utilities as well.
Yes,
they
true.
Normally include your utilities because it's a pain to have to set up your own internet and change the name on your electricity bill just for 3 months. It doesn't make sense. So to keep everybody happy, I mean, especially if I was only coming for 3 months, I don't want to have to worry about paying utilities. I'd just rather know that they're included and that's taken care of.
Yeah. And again, like with sales, we look at which product is in highest demand. And apartments were in highest demand, accounting for 56% of the rental transactions.
Yeah.
And then houses accounted for 25%. I mean, again, it's interesting because, of course, during COVID, houses were in highest demand, or townhouses, because you had your outdoor area
Space.
and you needed that privacy.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's kind of gone back to the whole apartment type setup.
Yeah, it's easier. I mean, it's easier to maintain, easier to clean.
Yeah.
And then you don't have the sort of necessary desire to want the outside space because you're able to go to the beach now. You're able to go for a run and go to the park and golf course and what have you. But obviously, as we mentioned, furnished rentals are still, I think, our highest sector. They're accounting for over 80% of our transactions between Q2 2019 to now. And
then another thing we do is we look at the demand by bedroom type. And again, 2 and 3 bedrooms were in highest demand. We found that during during Q2 in 2021 and again in 2022. 2 and 3 bedrooms accounted for 79% of rentals. We do actually have a lot of demand. I don't know if you find this, but for 4 bedrooms.
Yeah.
But we don't have a lot of supply of 4 bedrooms.
No, we don't.
But some clever developers have started to introduce 4 bedrooms into their product mix, which I think is going to be really welcomed.
Yeah, it's needed. I mean, it's nice, especially if that extra bedroom can be a home office. It can be an extra bedroom, but also, home office, gym, space. And especially if you do come with a family and you are all there, it is just nice to be able to spread out a little bit rather than being
and then we have a lot of families
3.
that want guests to come and visit.
Yeah.
So that makes a big difference.
Yeah. Definitely. And then in terms of location, obviously we also look at that as we do in the sales report as well. And predominantly, as expected, it is primarily along like the west coast and the south coast of Barbados. We are starting to see a few in the middle of the island in St. George. And that's where we've got sort of near Codrington and Providence School as well. So very handy and convenient if you're doing the school run on a morning.
Yeah. One of the things that I found really took place during COVID, and now we're seeing the demand shifts continue, is that people really appreciate being able to walk places.
Yes.
Right? So that is a huge pull of the South and West Coast because you can walk to the beach, you can walk to amenities.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had some clients that are like, we do not want to drive, we want to take public transportation, and we just want to be able to walk everywhere. So definitely the South and the West Coast are hot commodities from a rental and a sale point of view.
And that's the thing, if you can walk and you can get a taxi or use the pickup taxi service or something like that, it's much easier then rather than the stress of a car as well. So that's exciting. What's also interesting is our commercial rentals. Obviously during COVID 2021 and sort of coming out of the back end of COVID, especially here, commercial rentals were down, understandably, as they were all over the world. And compared to this time last year, in 2022, Q2, our commercial rentals increased by 150%.
Yeah.
So predominantly for commercial rentals, I've seen quite a bit of interest again in sort of retail in spaces like the Walk and along the south coast, where sort of amenities are close by, and as well for warehousing space. I am starting to see office space become more popular as well again, which is encouraging, especially when people are sort of transitioning from the work-at-home movement to then back into the office and the corporate sector. A lot of these rentals, actually 70% of our rentals in Q2 2022 were for spaces that were 1,200 square feet or below. So they're still smaller.
Yeah, they're still smaller, and I think that actually some companies are shifting to smaller spaces. Because while they're returning to work, they might be returning to work where, you know, a certain segment of the staff work 3 days and another segment work 2 days, so they just don't need as much space. But it's nice to see some of the space getting occupied regardless, for sure.
Most definitely.
And then just to end off rentals, we did look at the year-to-date statistics as well. And as would be expected, as we mentioned when we were opening the section on rentals, all of the statistics are down. You know, our transactions are down 18%. Rental revenue is down by 28%. Average rental rate is down by 12%, and the volume of leads is down by 8%. But we should really have compared those to the 2019 statistics. As
I think the majority would be increased.
I think that the majority would be increased. You know, I hope you guys have found this interesting and reach out to us or any of our team members for any questions at all. And look out for the next one.
I know. And
if
you are thinking about listing your house for rent or for sale, please do not hesitate to contact us.
Yes,
definitely. We'd love that. Especially the rentals right now.
And sales. I mean, I find that we're really low on product in certain price categories as well. So, keep us in mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.